Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of my concerns about the state of photography today. Usually when I make a presentation, I have a chance to see and be very attentive to my audience. I know when somebody's nodding off and if somebody else has a burning question or comment. And this format doesn't really afford me that opportunity. So what I'd like to do is give my presentation straight through and then take questions and comments at the end. And I'm guessing that there's going to be plenty of time for that. So first of all, let me give you a little bit of background. Back in 1989, I opened my first moto photo and portrait studio store. And those really were the days. People would just throw film at us, we'd process it, and they'd throw money at us. We would give them their prints, and it was really a pretty simple concept. Today it's really not so simple. The world of photography has been turned upside down over the past decade, really driven by the digital photography revolution. So now, my Moto Photo Store prints your digital pictures. We make enlargements. We do video transfers from old VHS tapes and a lot more. We have a portrait studio for family portraits. But we've changed our business model where we've become Northeast Ohio's largest event photography business. With school pictures, sports action photos, and sports team and individual photos. And frankly, this business segment produces the highest percentage of sales for our company. We also serve a national clientele with our printscans.com service. Printscans.com takes your prints and scans them to DVDs. Check it out when you get a chance. But today, most of our company sales comes from pictures that we take and sell to you rather than waiting for you to take pictures and then bring them to us. And frankly, this is a 180-degree shift from where we started. But let's take a look at what's happening in our industry. Today, more pictures are being taken than ever before. It is so easy to take pictures anytime and anywhere with digital cameras and smartphones. And some people have this impression that photography is declining because they're not seeing pictures or prints. But in fact, it's growing exponentially because the number of opportunities to take pictures are there because the devices are there to take those pictures. So if there is this exponential growth in pictures, why will future generations never have a chance to see today's pictures? Well, before the Kodak Brownie camera, pictures were taken primarily of special occasions. These pictures were carefully printed out, and they were saved to commemorate these special events. You find boxes of these pictures stored in your parents' basements and attics. They are your grandparents' wedding pictures. They are, pictures of your great-grandparents immigrating to the United States. They may be school pictures of the class in front of a one-room schoolhouse. You've seen all of these. You know what they look like. You've touched them. You've felt them. In later decades of consumer film photography, the routine was that you shot rolls of film and then you took them to a film processor. There, the film was developed and prints of every photo were printed out, usually as double prints. You know, we had free second set Wednesdays and free second set Fridays. You took pictures of your vacations and your kids' birthday parties. And I'm sure that you have hundreds of envelopes of prints of all of the times that have been special to your family. So, digital photography enters the picture. At the beginning of this century, digital cameras were introduced to consumers. As they improved and became less expensive, they replaced film cameras. Because, you know, it was a lot easier and less expensive to take pictures. Today, most consumers have one or more digital cameras, including those that are on their cell phone. And besides cell phones, what about all the tablet devices, such as, you know, iPads and Android devices? I can't tell you how many parents and kids I see at events watching them through their iPads, taking photos and making videos. And unlike the past, this means that most people have a camera with them at all times and can take pictures. You know, think about it. Before digital, you'd grab the camera when you were about to go on vacation or when you were about to go to a birthday party. But typically, you didn't have a camera hanging around you. Okay? So this has changed the definition of special event, where weddings, vacations, and birthday parties were the special events of the past. Today's special event is whatever's happening at the moment. And every special event has become an opportunity to take pictures. People, especially the younger generations, are taking pictures at almost every moment now. Well, why is that? Of course, it's because you have to have your obligatory bathroom mirror pictures. We never saw these before. This is a phenomenon. Everybody has to have a picture of themselves in front of the bathroom mirror for their Facebook. Well, now serious, the question is, why are people taking pictures? People are taking them a lot of times to exclaim, here I am. I'm with my friends. I'm at school. I am walking down the road. I am with my favorite celebrity. I'm no matter where they are, I'm somewhere. And they're using their photography, they're using their device to explain to the world, or at least to their social group, that they're at that particular place at that particular moment. There are many times that we're out shooting, like we may be at a school taking pictures of the cheerleaders. We're doing their individual pictures and the group picture. And you can imagine this. But I look over my shoulder, and there are 2 or 3 girls with their cell phones taking pictures of us, taking pictures of the cheerleaders. And we didn't see that before, but that's what's happening today. So, what's happening to all of these pictures that are being taken? You take a picture today, and what's the first thing you do? You turn the camera around and you show the picture on the screen to everybody else. Next, you upload it to Facebook, or you tweet it, or you Instagram it, or something else like that. Then, usually, nothing happens. The picture, as a digital image, stays in the memory of the camera. So, you run out of memory, and you start deleting pictures to free up more space. You know, you've already posted them to Facebook or Twitter, so does it really matter that you're deleting the pictures from your camera's memory? And by the way, Facebook is now the largest storage site for photos, and you probably knew that. The last reference that I could find goes back to around September of 2011. The number at that point was 140 billion photos are stored on Facebook. And you figure that's a year and a half ago pretty much. The number, I don't know, has it doubled? More? So anyway, some people, when they have a chance, they'll copy their pictures to a computer or someplace else. But frankly, you know, who really has time to do that? It hasn't been something that's been pressing on our, or something that's been important to us. Digital photography has allowed us to take more pictures, but has not created a compulsion to keep them permanently. This used to be done for us when we took them to the film processor, when we took them to Photomat or Motophoto or the drugstore or wherever. And think about it. One of the earlier social media websites was MySpace. It was a service that was launched only as recently as 2003. People posted their pictures to MySpace. But who cares about their MySpace pages now? What happened to all of those pictures? Are they or will they be gone? Disappeared? Treasured memories no longer remembered through those photographs? Will the same thing happen with Facebook and Flickr and Twitter and Pinterest and Instagram and all those other sites that are popping up? Or, who knows what people are going to be thinking about or coming up with in the future? Will these sites still be around decades from now or be gone pretty much like MySpace? I don't know how many of you had your photos or you used Kodak EasyShare. What's Kodak EasyShare today? The company is bankrupt. Who would have thought that Kodak would go through bankruptcy? Nobody in the photo industry 10 years or 20 years ago in particular would have thought that that was going to be the case. Such an iconic institution. So, think about it. Why are you taking pictures? Why are you entrusting your precious memories to fleeting technology? Why are you taking them? Are you taking them to capture something? Are you taking them because you're going to be selling your photos? Are you taking them just because you can take pictures? How much do you care about what happens to the pictures that you are taking today? Do you care if the pictures you're taking are available to your children, to your grandchildren, to your great-grandchildren, and to generations to come? Do you enjoy looking back at your old pictures or the pictures of your parents, grandparents, or prior generations? Do you laugh at the bell-bottoms and tie-dyes of the 1960s? Do you cry at the soldiers coming home in the 1940s and 50s? Do you try and figure out who your great-great-aunts and uncles were on the farm? If you are going to work hard to get the perfect picture, then you need to work just as hard to prepare that picture so that others can view it for years to come. I talk to professional photographers, and I'm also a professional landscape photographer myself. We work very hard to get the images we want. I've woken up at 4:30 a.m. in the Grand Tetons just so I could drive to the spot I scouted the day before and take a photograph of Mormon Barn at sunrise. I had about a 10-minute window of opportunity to get my picture just before the light changed. We're all wired this way, working very hard, sometimes putting ourselves at risk to take the pictures we want. And many of you can relate to this concept, or in my case, it's probably an affliction. The best strategy for you is to stop trusting current technology. Your computers, memory cards, hard drives, tablets, cell phones, smartphones are becoming the Betamaxes of tomorrow. Do something that needs no technology to permanently store and view your pictures. Print your pictures, at least the important ones. Store them in a safe place. Prints only require light to view them. They do not need batteries or other forms of electricity. Just at a minimum, they need daylight. They don't need to be booted up or have a working screen. They can be held in your hands. Prints don't have to be in today's format like Jpeg. And back up your digital files. Keep all of your digital pictures in 3 different places using 3 different technologies. For example, number 1, burn them to DVDs and put them in a safe deposit box. Number 2, upload them to a website. Number 3, keep them on a hard drive at home. There are many combinations of technologies to choose from. But if your hard drive crashes, for example, you still have them on DVD. Or, if your house burns down, you can download them from the website. I'll tell you, several years ago, I was talking to the CEO of one of the companies that's a photo storage website. And it was just after Hurricane Katrina. He said to me, "Rick, I watched all those people whose homes were damaged by the hurricane clutching their photo albums as they tried to find shelter. If they had just uploaded all of their photos to my website, they would not have had to worry because their photos would have been safe and they could have downloaded them later." You know, I realized he was right. But I also realized that his company might not be around forever, and he was still trusting his technology. Remember back in April, I think it was 2011, when there was an outage on Amazon's Elastic Cloud Compute? It knocked off websites like Foursquare and Reddit and Hootsuite and hundreds of other companies. Data was actually lost, even though it was thought that it was backed up in one of the safest places on the cloud one could think of. So, think ahead, and most importantly, print out your most important pictures. Printing 4x6 prints today is cheap and it's easy. They can be scanned in the future to turn them into slideshows and collages that you can use to embarrass your kids. Future generations who don't exist today will thank you for your foresight. They will be as curious about today as you have been about yesterday. They don't want you to lose this generation's photos. So here's a story. Remember 10 years ago when you were up in your parents' attic and you found those boxes of old photographs? You sat there in the dust and the cobwebs and you were pulling out all those old photographs, trying to figure out who was in them. You looked at your great-grandmother's handwriting on the back where she dutifully listed the people in the picture. You smiled at the old wedding dresses and the suits the grooms wore. You sniffed thinking of all of the old memories, of your old memories as a child. You laughed at your parents wondering, what were they thinking? So let's fast forward now, maybe 10 years in the future. You go up into the attic looking for the old pictures, and all you find is a box of CDs. Maybe there's some old smart media cards too. Remember them? You hold one of the CDs up to the light, but you can't see the pictures stored on them. So you go rushing down to the basement looking for that old Dell computer that, maybe still has a CD reader on it. You go looking around for the cords and, an old monitor to plug in, and you find the only mouse around is the one that's now living in the computer. So, you're pretty much stuck. You've lost those pictures, maybe forever. If they'd only been prints instead of digital images, well, that's the way it goes. Our photo industry used to be very good at convincing you to take pictures and print them. Remember all those old Kodak commercials? Our industry doesn't do that anymore. We really aren't doing a very good job. The industry doesn't have the financial means or really the determination that it once had. To save this and future generations worth of photos, we need to change our habits and our behaviors. I guess we need you to tell all of your friends and colleagues too.
If you have any questions,
so that's
type
my
them
story.
in the,
Thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
The
webinar is open for any questions or comments.
Okay, we have a question about how do you preserve the prints?
Question appears to be, well, some of the most important things are to keep them away from moisture and from sunlight. A lot of people will buy some archival quality boxes, and typically those are boxes that you can buy from companies like Pioneer Photo and others that just don't have acid into the paper. So keep them in an area that the temperature isn't going to change a whole lot. It's not going to get too hot, it's not going to get too cold, but in particular keep them away from moisture. That seems to be the worst thing. Many of the older photos didn't have a very long lifetime. They'd fade, and your negatives would fade. But back in the early 90s, both Kodak and Fuji and a company called APCUG were going head-to-head on how to improve their technology for both film and for prints. And the race was on to have something that would last without fading. They all came up with what's pretty much the standard now. Most of the prints that we make will last without fading typically about 125 years. Who knows what it's really going to be, but that's what the technical standards have said. So you can feel pretty good about that. The other part of it is what you really want to do is to use either the chemistry-based photos that you're used to. You go into a Walmart, you see the machines with chemistry all over. But today, photo finishers like us are using inkjet technology, which has improved incredibly. So the prints that we're putting out on our equipment still have this 125-year lifespan predicted. But we're not using any chemistry to produce them. And frankly, the color is a whole lot better than what we saw off of the chemistry-based stuff because the color gamut is bigger. I see a question about printing things yourself. You can, but a lot of times people will purchase cheaper paper or cheaper ink, or sometimes they'll mismatch them. So maybe you'll buy paper from HP, but you'll get ink from Office Max or something like that. If you want your prints to last, you need to go to the higher end inks and papers. They will last longer. You also have to be concerned about what your photo finisher is doing. Most of us who have moved to inkjet technologies are in great shape. We don't have the issues that the chemistry-based folks did previously, where they weren't maintaining their chemistry properly, and maybe things turned out magenta or some other color, but because they weren't managing their chemistry, their prints won't last very long. You know, I'm always going to say go to a professional photo finisher because that's my industry. But much of that technology has become available to the consumer. You just need to use it appropriately. The question is what to do with old family portraits and photos. The best thing to do, frankly, is to get them digitized sooner rather than later as one of your backup options. So you'll have the physical prints, but then you can have the prints digitally, which also gives you the opportunity to store, let's say, the DVDs in a bank safe deposit box, or to make copies and spread them around to your siblings or other relatives so that they can use them. You're sharing with them, but it's also a backup for you. That's what our print scans business is about, taking, for example, I have people who will fill a box with over 3,000 pictures, and we have the technology to just scan them at 300 or 600 or 1200 DPI and get them back. I'm seeing the DPI question come up here. Typically, 300 DPI is the standard for printing. A lot of people in the business of archiving like a 1200 DPI. With today's digital technology and hard drives and the cost of data, you know, it's not a big deal to have everything scanned at 1200 DPI and store it because you don't have a whole lot of additional costs. So bigger is always better. Question about preserving old film negatives. Those should be treated in a manner similar to your prints. You want to manage the humidity, temperature, things like that. But many of the negatives in the past were put in sleeves that were not aging friendly. So they may be sticking to the sleeves, and if you pull them out, you may actually damage the negatives. But frankly, today, with the scanning technology, we are doing far less preservation from negatives than we are preservation from prints. We'd almost, from a labor point of view, rather scan a print than scan a negative. So I wouldn't worry so much about the negatives, but if you do, there are a number of companies. You can Google archival photo, and you'll find a couple of places that still will sell you archival quality film sleeves, and you can transfer your negatives to those. Importance of writing on the back. That is very important, and you always have to be careful that the inks that you're using don't travel to the other side of the picture. We see that frequently. We also see people putting post-it notes on the back of their pictures, and there's a little bit of safety there, but then they can become separated over time.
What about old
and
8mm
in some cases,
movies
we've had people putting post-it notes on the front of their pictures, and when you remove it, they can tend to remove portions of the picture as well. So you got to be careful with that. Well, that's a big business for us and for other places like us. I had a customer bring in, I think, 40 VHS-C tapes the other day, and we are burning those to DVD for them. It's a constant thing. The technology that your VHS players, your tape players are just dying left and right. And so digitizing any of these things at least gives you the opportunity to have them in a format that won't deteriorate over time. And in 10 or 20 years from now, our business is going to be transferring from DVD to something else. We thought it was going to be DVD to Blu-ray, but Blu-ray isn't really taken off that much. It's going to be something else in the future. So you have to kind of realize that all of these technologies over a decade or two, there's a business there to convert them to the latest and greatest technology. And I don't mind because that helps us keep in business. Question is, after a picture is scanned, can names and dates be added to the file or onto the digital print? They can, but typically people are using software like Picasa, or there are other types of software out there where you are taking the picture and you're entering the data, maybe the subjects, the date, the location, things like that. And then you can pull up all of the pictures that were taken on a certain vacation, or all of the pictures of your mom. Maybe your mom has passed away and you're putting together a video to show at the funeral. Well, with those technologies, it's easy to find the pictures rather than digging through boxes and boxes of stuff, and you can pick out the digital ones that you want and then just move them into a show. So there are a number of things like that. The next thing that I think will be happening in our industry, we're starting to see it more and more now, is facial recognition software, so that you're going to put them again into a Picasa or something like that, and you're going to say, find all of the pictures of my mom, she looks like this, and it won't have to do it through a database search. It'll do it through facial recognition, and it'll pull up all the pictures of that particular person.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Rick, what's the name of your website where people can order a box to send you pictures? Yes.
Let's see. I think I can type that here. Is that whiteboard? Yeah. Okay. Hello.
Okay, and that it's called print.
Ah, there it is.
It's called print.com.
I guess I'm not doing something right. Anyway, oh, there it is. Okay, printstands.com. And the way that printstands.com. Yeah, and the concept is that either we will ship you a postage paid box, and you throw as many prints in as you can fit, and send them to us. Choose a couple of options, and we scan them and get them back to you. Or you take your box and you fill it up with all of your prints, and you just send it to us, and the charge is based on a per print price rather than just the price of the box. So take a look at those options. Let's see. The question about Picasa is true. There are some software that you can buy and just load on your computer. There's freeware. There's Adobe has some things that you can use. Lightroom might be a good option off of Adobe. Let's see, the information on magnetic tape audio and video fade over time. Yep, that's true. Again, have those digitized. That's not a technology that we're involved with, but I gotta guess that somebody is coming out there with it. Insights on new and upcoming camera technology. You know, right now, a lot of the camera companies are trying to find more ways to sell units. They made a whole bunch of money at the beginning of and middle of the last decade because there were, you know, you'd get your 4-megapixel camera and that wasn't good enough, so you got your 8-megapixel and then you got your 12 and your 16. And we've really kind of reached a limit of what a consumer needs for resolution on their cameras. So they've gone to all of this neat other stuff like vibration-free or stitching together panoramic pictures or scene adjustments or, you know, all kinds of different things like that. So the issue is how many new extras can a company come up with to be able to convince you that your camera is obsolete and it needs to be replaced. Well, there's not a lot. What you really want to do with your camera as far as quality picture taking is concerned is get something that is useful to you but has good glass. And that means you need a good lens. And you want to think about it this way. With your single lens reflex cameras, you get a nice piece of glass there. You know, Nikkor lenses are real good, and the other ones are real good as well. But compare that to the lens on your smartphone. You know, you might have a chip in there that can do an 8-megapixel or bigger picture, but the glass in front of it is really terrible. It's small. It gets smudged, you get dirt on it, you know, it's just awful. And you might be able to produce or capture something of a relatively high resolution, but you've got a lousy picture because you don't have a really good lens. So the trade-off is, when you're wanting to take great pictures, you need a good camera that has good glass that's attached to it. But if you want to be able to take pictures practically any time, anywhere, that's where you're going to use your smartphone, your tablet, or whatever else it is that you're carrying around with you. We are seeing cameras that, you know, move, that capture images faster. You know, you can store more on memory cards for a lot less. But the technology is a little bit stuck right now, and that's disconcerting to many of the camera manufacturers because they got fat, dumb, and happy off of selling new generations of digital cameras. Carol's question about Jpeg format, frankly, it's not the best because Jpeg is a format that automatically compresses an image, and it'll compress it based on how much variation there is in that picture. So for example, if you take a picture of the snow, there's not a lot of variation in it, and it's going to compress it a whole lot more, whereas if you take a picture of a zebra, the compression algorithm is going to be less. But no matter what, it's going to be compressing, and when it is compressing, it's throwing out pixels because it thinks that it can recreate them later on. The best formats are TIFF, TIF, or it's the equivalent of a Photoshop format where nothing is thrown out. The top one for picture taking is RAW, R-A-W, and that is a format where the image is, for all intents and purposes, is the same image that is coming right off of the sensor in your camera without any special manipulation that the camera does. There's no processing to that image. you are to process that image later on. So you bring it in your computer and you work on it at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., for hours and hours until you're perfectly satisfied with the way things are. Well, we shot like a gymnastics meet this past weekend, and
Rick,
we shot
any
maybe
last word of
20,
advice that you can think
25,000
of?
pictures. We can't shoot those in RAW, even though there are advantages to it, because we just can't process 20 to 25,000 pictures individually. So we shoot those all as JPEGs. There's one other thing that I'll share with you, and that is we're seeing more and more people share their lives and the lives of their children with their face in their electronic device. And it's an issue that's becoming a little bit more disconcerting to me, because I'll go to, let's say, one of the figure skating competitions that we're shooting, and there's mom who's holding up her iPad in front of her, and she is videoing or taking pictures of her kid on the ice. And dad is next to her, and he's got his smartphone and he's taking pictures. And they're living their lives by looking at screens rather than taking that screen out of the equation and enjoying their children. And I know that you see these things where you go, but think about what you're doing. It's great to take pictures. It's phenomenal that there's this exponential increase in photography, and there's this capture and sharing and all this going on. But at the same time, people are putting technology in between them and their children or their relative or somebody else, rather than just enjoying the entirety of the moment and of the time.